We're continuously told that police are there to protect us, and yet why is it that every time I hear advice from a lawyer with respect to police, it's how to protect yourself from police? It's do not cooperate with them, do not say anything, because they will only use it against you. I thought they were there to protect us. Why are we protecting ourselves from them? And you realize that police are to the state as the HR department is to the company, right? They'll tell you it's there to protect you, but really it's protecting the bigger thing, the company or the state. You have the right to remain silent. Use it, because if you say things, they will only lead to you incriminating yourself. And that's true. Police estimate that almost 70% of cases, they're able to get a suspect or a person they're questioning to incriminate themselves. They are there to punish us. They are there to enforce what they or their superiors think is important to enforce. And their superiors could be the leadership in the police station. It could also be political. It could be a mayor or a governor or a president. But also their superiors are indirectly rich people in large corporations, because in America, in capitalism, we allow rich people in large corporations to buy our politicians, who can then tell police that it's important to enforce things a certain way, which will protect their interests over the people's interests. That's why you see people actually receiving punishment for things like shoplifting, while companies who commit wage theft, if they get caught for it, see a fine that's tiny relative to the amount they've stolen in wages, and nobody sees any jail time. Not to mention that their superiors can have certain productivity expectations to make more arrests or make more traffic stops, benefiting a for-profit prison system. When you think about a good cop, what does that look like? Is it a cop who arrests more people and cites more people and writes more tickets? When you hear a feel-good story about a police officer, is it that the police officer threw a guy on the ground, handcuffed him, and threw him in jail because he was doing something bad? Or is it about the police officer who decides, hey, maybe I'm going to let you off the hook this time. Maybe try to be careful out there. I'm concerned about your safety. I'm not concerned about putting you in jail. And then it's like, well, isn't that the opposite of what police are supposed to do? This all comes back to what I talked about in the liberation and oppression rant, which is that conservatives just think people are bad. And so the only way to keep bad people from being bad is by punishing them and oppressing them. So you increase the police. Whereas if you invest in mental health institutions and mental health resources and drug rehabilitation centers and other forms of social service like public schools and recreation centers, the crime rate comes down. You don't need police to start with. When you invest in institutions that are devoted to de-escalation, unlike police, less crimes happen to start with. Think about it. If you've got a madman waving a gun, does the cop come in and say, let's diffuse this situation? You put down the gun, I'll put down the gun. No, when the crazy man with the gun yells, the cop yells louder. They're there to oppress. They are not there to de-escalate. Then, of course, there's the racial dynamics. There's a disconnect between the policy and how that policy is enforced, whether that's by police or by the American justice system in general, like judges. And this gap is where the subjectivity can come in, and that's where the racism can come in. They've done studies across millions of routine police stops and shown that even when they correct for factors like the location or neighborhood they're in, the types of offenses, and other situational factors, Black and Hispanic people are much more likely to experience violence from police than white people. Not to mention that the increase in likelihood that violence is committed against you if you commit violence towards the police first is negligible for white people compared to the increase for Black people. Black and Latinx populations are disproportionately involved in investigative stops relative to their proportions of the population, even though in some of those studies, white people were more likely to actually have contraband. I think that's because there's like a written piece of policy that says that they have to do that, or is that because maybe there's some subjectivity between the law and what can be enforced and where and on who? And that's where your subconscious bias comes in. Subconscious bias that you have to work to unlearn. Do you think the police academy is teaching them how to de-escalate situations? Do you think the police academy is teaching them how to undo their subconscious bias? I don't. And so when people say defund the police, I feel like it's often associated with, well, you just want criminals to be criminals. You just want crazy lawlessness. Right? Liberals and leftists are soft on crime. And it's like, no, I believe in the good in people. And I believe that when you don't oppress them as much, they don't commit crimes as much to start with. We spend 160 to 170 billion dollars a year on state and local polices. How many people do you think we could get out of poverty with that money? How much social infrastructure could we build so that people are not as desperate or are too occupied to be able to commit crimes? There's no good evidence to show that increased police spending leads to less crimes actually happening. But there is good evidence to show that when you invest in social structures and bringing people out of poverty, they commit crimes less to start with. So why is the emphasis on police? And the emphasis is on police because they are there to protect the state. And they are there to continue the flow of people into the for-profit prison system.